Welcome to Traveler's Tales. I am your host, Greg Alonso. Today I will be your guide through history as we take a look at the rise of the Roman legion. Before we begin, just a quick reminder that we post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, with special editions on Thursdays. Don't forget to hit the little bell icon to be notified each time we post new videos. Moving right along, mythology tells us one thing, while archaeology tells us another. Who created the legions of Rome? Why were the legions such an unstoppable warrior force? Were they truly the world's first professional army? Today we will answer these questions as we take a look at this inimitable army. During the time of the Roman kings, forces were divided into centuries. These units consisted of 100 men. The centuries were grouped together as required and answered to the leader who raised the force. This person eventually became the famed Roman centurion. Second in command was the standard bearer. The centuries were light infantry with some cavalry attached. To serve in the forces of Rome was seen as both a duty and a distinguishing mark of Roman citizenship. At this time, most of the wealthy landowners served in the military. It was believed that these individuals would have the most to lose should the state have fallen. The size of the typical legion varied throughout the history of Rome. During the Republic, a legion was composed of 5,200 infantry and 300 equites, which were cavalry. These horsemen were usually drawn from the wealthier classes. During this time, the legionnaires had to provide their own equipment. Since legions were not permanent units, until the Marian reforms, when Rome was not at war, the legions were disbanded. One of the only requirements to join the legion was property ownership. Since many could not meet this financial requirement, Gaius Marius removed the property qualifications and decreed that all citizens, regardless of their wealth or social class, were eligible for service in the army. Marius also ensured that equipment and rewards were provided by the state. At that time, the standard enlistment for a legionary was 6 years of service. The Roman army then became a volunteer, professional, and standing army. Service was also extended to non-citizens who could sign on as auxilia. These auxiliaries were rewarded with Roman citizenship upon completion of service and all rights and privileges that entailed. In the time of the Empire, a legion consisted of 5,600 infantry and 300 auxiliary. For most of the Roman imperial period, the legions formed the Roman army's elite heavy infantry. These legionnaires were recruited from those with Roman citizenship. The remainder of the army consisted of auxiliaries. Their function was to provide additional infantry and cavalry. Upon the succession of Augustus, Rome had 50 legions. The emperor scaled the army back to 25 to 35 permanent standing legions. This figure remained for most of the empire's history. Throughout the imperial era, the legions played an important political role. We especially saw this with the legions of Julius Caesar. They loved him so much that their allegiance was to him and not to Rome. Caesar was so powerful that he dared to enter Rome leading his legions. The Senate, realizing they did not have the power to control Caesar, bent to his will and elected him dictator for life. With Julius Caesar's legions behind him, Augustus rose to power. Augustus's military policy proved sound and cost-effective. He was also able to standardize the legions, and this was generally followed by his successors. The military had become something of a status symbol. Even though discipline could be quite harsh and strictly enforced, men were proud to serve as a legionary. Why were the Roman legions so successful? Surely other countries had excellent armies. On the whole, Roman organization was more flexible than those of many of their opponents. Romans were always a much more disciplined force, and their persistence was unrivaled. Let's not forget that the Romans were also a massive war machine. They employed weapons that many of the enemies couldn't even fathom. However, it is my opinion that the link that kept the units together were the Roman centurions. They were the backbone of Rome's legions. These battle-hardened veterans were responsible for the training, discipline, and motivation of their men. Once they had achieved these aims, the centurions were adept at keeping order of their units while on the battlefield. We can clearly see that the Roman legions were well trained and equipped. They were disciplined, persistent, and highly motivated to crush their enemies on the battlefield. This brings us to the end of the rise of the Roman legion. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Traveler's Tales. If you enjoyed this video, please consider joining our channel by becoming a sponsor. Your support will enable us to continue putting out quality videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Traveler's Tales. This really is the best way to help our channel grow. Until we meet again at the crossroads of folklore and fact, Kartistos.